and welcome to another episode of Ljubljana Talks right here in Frankfurt at IMEX 2025. And with Gorazd, we have another guest, and I know we're going to have a great conversation ahead of us. Kim Arazi from Innosensi is with us, and we're going to talk about human-centric experiences and transformation. So tell us more about yourself, Kim.
Thank you for having me, first of all, both of you. It's great to be here. So, talking about what I do. So my company, Innosensi, is all about how do we innovate using the senses. Why the senses? Because I feel that after working in events for more than 15 years, I feel that when we engage more than one sense at a time, we retain information. This is scientifically proven. And I feel when we go to most events, especially conferences, we're engaging one or two senses. We're watching things and we're listening to talks, but we're not fully engaged. And that means when we leave, we're not retaining all the information. So I wanted to find a way to create experiences that are very meaningful, very impactful, and memorable. And the way to do that, I found, is to make sure we engage all our senses in the experiences that we create.
I want to dig deeper, I want to learn more about you, about your career, about your experiences. Can you tell us more about you?
Okay, so I come from originally a marketing background. I worked in marketing for many years, but then I went into TV and film. So I'm a storyteller. I love to tell stories. And I worked in that industry for quite a few years, making TV series for kids all over the world. And then I fell into tech. It was really an accident. And I ended up in a trade body, a global trade association for the mobile tech industry, where we put on huge conferences, CEO summits, awards shows, all these kinds of big events around the world. And I became their head of global events because I was a producer in television. So now I produce live events. And I did that for more than 12 years. And it was a wonderful experience. I mean, meeting, conferences, of course. You meet people all over the world. That part was beautiful. And the creativity was fun too, because I could design the whole event from the seed of the idea into the whole thing. However, what I started to find after years of doing this, at least in the tech industry, it's not the events industry, it's the tech industry, what I would find is I put a lot of care and thought into the curation. What speakers we're going to have, what is the narrative, what is the flow, what are the moments. I would put so much thought into this, and I would say the majority of the people were in the hallways exchanging business cards. And it started to make me feel a bit uncomfortable that I'm bringing these amazing people to speak on stage, and there's not very many people in the room. I'm exaggerating. Of course, there were full rooms at times, but I started to understand that this audience, these participants, are much more interested in actually doing business with each other than education, than listening to things. They're there, number one, they have business deals they need to close, but also it's a vacation for them away from their family, and they just want to mingle with each other. So I started to think we need to think about this differently. This is not working anymore, at least in this industry. Also, the thing I started to notice, it's the same old, same old. You have the same speakers on stage in every event, from Barcelona to San Francisco to London. It's always the same speakers in this particular industry. And so after 12 years of that, I was a bit jaded. I thought, you know what? I want to do experiences that really impact people, that they want to be there for, that they want to go on a journey. And I think I want to do them for smaller amounts of people too, because it's hard to fulfill huge audiences. So I went to a workshop at Oxford, actually, that was all about the senses. And Professor Charles Spence, who is a cross-modal psychologist at the university, had a workshop where he had chefs and sound designers and perfume makers and people who work in all of the different elements of our senses, showing how important each of those senses are and how they interact together. And that just lit something up in me. I'm like, that's what's missing in events. We're just going, we're getting input, but we're not actually participating with all our sense. And that got the whole ball rolling. This was back in 2017. Of how can I create something meaningful and impactful using all the senses? That was the missing ingredient. And because I love hosting events and I love dining experiences. I love to host dinner parties. I love food. I'm a foodie. I thought maybe we can start by doing something around a table. How do we tell a story as a storyteller through food, through the senses, around a table where everyone's engaged, everyone's breaking bread together, there's no hierarchy. We can really get to the nitty-gritty of an issue or a story through a sensory meal, and that's what started everything.
But about how many senses we are talking about?
I talk about the 5 senses. Of course, we have 21 actually, but I talk about smell, hearing, taste, touch, and sight. Those are the.
And how good is IMEX in touching all the senses?
Well, I think with the combination of the education side and the exhibitor side, I think it's doing a pretty good job, because on the education side, we have a lot of interactive, let's say, experiences that are touching on more than one sense. I think in the exhibitor side, it's pretty standard, right? We have the booths. I do notice, I have to say, going around, I do notice there are booths where there are people doing activities that are not typical. For example, making a perfume or colored strings on our wrists, things that are a little bit different, not high tech, very low tech, and people are lining up for that stuff. So that's very interesting.
Low tech.
The low tech.
It's we say low tech, high touch, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly.
If we go back to IMEX as an example, I think it kind of concurs with your own findings that people want to do business, and IMEX is the largest European event, and there's a lot of people here, and the emphasis is on business, and it's really full and it's really loud and it's happening, right? And you go then to the educational part and you see it's a different kind of an environment all of a sudden, much more concentrated, kind of people are focused, with the earphone. How would you say the senses nowadays in modern business that we are in the events, do you see changes into what you are preaching, to put this way?
Absolutely. I think when I started working with sensory design, I think people didn't know what it was, and they're like, yeah, that sounds weird, cool, but whatever. Now it's become very mainstream, actually, and what I'm finding is the fact that IMEX is about the events industry. The people who come, even though they're here to do business, a lot of them do run events themselves. They're either agencies or they're within a corporate or hotels or whatever. They're running events, so they are interested, and they do know that the senses are such an integral part. And I am seeing more and more people on the education side very engaged. So I think the difference for me is when I worked in these big conferences and exhibitions, it was tech people, and they are just trying to do business and do deals, and it is very one way of thinking. When you work with the events industry, it's a people industry, so they are more open and interested to find out new ways to engage their audiences, right? So it's a very different industry, and it's fun being here because people actually want to learn. They want to talk about this. So, yeah.
Tell me more about how you measure the emotional, I would say, sensory results of the event. Only what we measure we can improve, actually. So is there any technique or method?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm not coming from necessarily the scientific part of it, but for me, the measurement is the participation. So when I do an event, an experience, I will always have a very interactive element. It's not the audience, it's the participants, right? They're part of it. And whether it's something they are meant to, I don't know, paint together, create a song together, there'll always be something where they are participating. And if the participation is high, and we can measure that because we see at the end, how many paintings were there, how many drawings were there, all of the things I do can be measured that way, then we know it was successful. And that's, for me, it's like, that's the best way to measure, because that's how we know how people enjoyed and felt something. They actually participated. If they weren't interested, if it wasn't working, they would just walk away.
Can you create a kind of list? What should we avoid when we are planning events, absolutely avoid, in line with what we talked so far?
When you talk about events, that's a big thing. Do you mean a huge conference? Do you mean a small dinner? What?
Let's start with
A good example of an application.
Okay, I would say, well, avoid doing an event to showcase bells and whistles. Like, oh, we have this new technology, or we have this, I'll just throw an event around it. That's not a reason to create an event. For me, you only create an event if you have a very strong why. You know the impact you want to have on the people, you know the message you want to send, and you know how you want them to feel when they leave. If you don't have a strong why and an objective, don't create an event. You can do some kind of activation or something like that, but don't create an event, because people feel it. If they go to an event and there's no narrative, there's no strong why, they feel it and they leave empty. So there's no point to me. So that it's starting with the why always.
Yesterday we met and we spoke, and you were there with Pigalle.
Yes.
And she approaches it through a very neuroscientific approach.
Yes.
How did your two, because you did a combined session, how did you two collaborate? How did you make it work?
So I do a lot of work around, as I said, dinners and food, because I think we can tell amazing stories through food, through a meal. So a lot of my events and experiences have food involved. And so when we were given this task of how do we create an interesting icebreaker for a networking lunch where most people won't know each other, we put our minds together as someone who works with the senses and food, and for Pigalle, someone who works a lot with emotion and the science and the neuroscience of how to create emotion. We put our heads together and came up with a very honestly simple idea, low budget, very simple idea, but I have to say it really worked because people keep coming up to us over these last 2 days saying that they really enjoyed it. And what it was instead of just coming to a networking lunch, you go pick up your plate from the buffet, choose your dishes, and go stand at the bar table and eat, and awkwardly talk to the person next to you. Oh, hi, I'm Mary, what's your name? Which can be very awkward, especially for introverts. It's not fun. It's actually not fun at all.
Sometimes it's a cringe,
It's a cringe. Yeah. So we thought, how do we make this less cringy and more related to the actual food to get people thinking about the food in the event? So we worked with the chef in advance, and we chose 4 specific ingredients that he was using in different dishes, and we pulled those out and did a bit of research on them and the essence and the energy and the neuroscience behind each of those ingredients, and we wrote it up on a card on each bar table, and then we had stickers for each of the vegetables. It's on my badge, actually, the stickers. And you could choose the sticker of whatever you put on your plate and how it resonates with how you run events. So each thing had a different meaning. So tomatoes, means you're very open, you're open-hearted, you have a lot of empathy, you're very inclusive. So if you put a tomato on your badge and someone else maybe has a carrot, you could talk to each other. Oh, you have a carrot. Why did you put a carrot? And it's just a reason to start a conversation, but also thinking more about the food they chose on their plate, which usually people don't think about. They just put something on their plate, they're chatting with someone, they're not even paying attention.
It reminds me of my student life, We had such an exercise at that time. Yeah, very, very interesting. Yeah. But let me assume that you have unlimited budget to close this show tomorrow at 3 o'clock. So what would you do together with Pigalle or yourself, I must give you unlimited budget, so you can play with that.
Unlimited budget. I turn it into a big karaoke show, I think. I don't know. I would want to do something that really involves everyone. Again, I don't like passive activities. I like participating activities where people are part of it. So I would do something that's fun, that's memorable. Actually, I really like the guys who were hosting our session just now. Okay. I think they're called Song Vision.
Yeah, Song Vision.
Yeah, and they create songs and music out of what happened at an event. I love that. So a big performance around that with everyone getting up on stage and taking part. I think anything that's interactive, fun, lighthearted, and memorable. So, yeah.
Wow. We are slowly coming towards the end because, as you saw, Jure already came behind the camera, which kind of is a cue for us.
Secret message.
A secret message. So, towards the end of this podcast, we usually have a couple of fire questions. So these are short questions that you can answer, in a long way or in a very short way. And if you want to elaborate, of course, you can elaborate. So my first one would be hearing or tasting.
Hearing.
Italian or French cuisine?
Italian.
Why?
My partner's Italian, and he's a chef.
Let's go to enology now. Red or white wine?
Red.
Why?
I enjoy it more.
There we go. Thank you very much.
Thank
you, Kim, for taking the time. And it was a very interesting debate. I think talking about senses at events is really something is not done often. So I think it's a very thought-provoking thing, and I think it opens a lot of questions for perhaps another future debate. So thank you very much for coming to Ljubljana Talks. And everybody, remain tuned as we are coming back shortly.